A new book about the Tulsa Race Massacre that took decades to get published is now part of an exhibit at Greenwood Rising.
Murder in the Streets offers an eyewitness account from a teenager who lived in Tulsa and described the massacre in detail. In this Oklahoma's own original, News on 6's Amy Slanchik explains how time can add insight to a 100-year perspective.
I am certain that at no other time in my life have I been as hot as on the day of the riot, the author writes. William Phillips, nicknamed Chalk for being part Choctaw, says the warmth of a normal June day plus the heat from burning buildings caused great drops of perspiration to ooze from every pore in my body, soak my hair, and drip from the end of my nose. Chalk's account, not put on paper until the 60s, reads like a diary as he describes what he saw as a 19-year-old. The crowd at the courthouse where Dick Rowland was held, accused of assaulting a white girl on an elevator. The first shot fired. And the mob, bent on the total obliteration of everything destructible.
My dad had almost a photographic memory, and he remembered everything.
Larry Phillips is the author's son.
He talked about the race massacre at various times when people would listen to him.
Larry says that wasn't often, but people are ready to listen, perhaps now more than ever, with many craving information about what was once Tulsa's secret.
No tornado, earthquake, or other phenomena of nature ever destroyed a city in the USA so completely.
What makes the book Murder in the Streets unique, Hannibal Johnson says, is that it was written by a white witness.
So we don't just want the black perspective on this historic and horrific event that was the massacre in 1921. We want a more well-rounded perspective.
Johnson, an author and historian who has written several books on the massacre in Black Wall Street, wrote the prologue to Chalk's book. Johnson calls the book remarkable, although he says nothing surprised him, including this. Chalk writes, it is not the purpose of the writer to assess responsibility for the riot. There was great wrong done on both sides. Johnson says context is key, and the reader should remember this was a time when white supremacy was the guiding philosophy.
Even people who consider themselves to be fair-minded and non-racist would make statements like that.
While it's not the focus of the book, Chalk does point to a group of armed black men for creating conditions for the riot by threatening to burn down the courthouse.
Even O.W. Gurley, considered the father of the Greenwood district of Black Wall Street, in part blamed some black agitators.
A century later, we have the luxury of time, context, and resources to help us understand what happened and recognize that no matter what led up to the massacre, an angry white mob still chose to kill and destroy homes and businesses, changing Tulsa forever.
The whole idea of this book is to make people understand that people need to respect each other and they need to understand each other. The fact that it happened and nobody wanted to talk about it, I think that really bothered me because my dad tried endlessly to get it published.
Now it's not only published, but the manuscript and the typewriter used to put it together are on display for visitors at Greenwood Rising.
And I kept it all these years, not realizing that it had a purpose. And the purpose was to be here in this museum and to represent my dad.
Chalk writes, watching the terrible episode develop step by step and knowing how wrong the entire affair was has caused me to read about, study, and research riots and confrontations for years. Hopefully, sharing this knowledge will help prevent others from becoming victims. Now his son Larry echoes a similar thought, more than 100 years after what his dad saw.
We can't let this cool off. That's what this museum is about. So people will remember and know that this can't happen again. It just can't.
In Tulsa, Amy Slanchik, Oklahoma's own News on 6.